Today is special because this is going to make number 41. For many years of touring one-man shows, one-person stage productions, I toured 40 of the 50 states, but for some reason I never played Utah. So even though I'm not there, you're there, but I'm here, but I'm still going to chalk this up as number 41. So Utah is number 41 of the 50 states in which I have performed. So it's an honor to have a chance to be with all you good folks in Utah. I'd like to take a moment also and dedicate my work today to my grandchildren, because anytime I do work, especially work that has to do with the environment, I dedicate that work to my grandchildren and the future generations, that we might leave the world a better place. I want to thank Deep Vellum Publishing, the publisher of The River Always Wins, a beautiful book. They did a tremendous job on the publication of the book, and honored to be with them. I'd also like to take a moment and mention the reason that today's performance is special. For 50 years, I was an activist and a performer. And last fall, I began to lose my voice altogether to the point that I could not speak. I had to have a surgical procedure last November, and it did not work. And there was a period of time in which I did not have a voice after 50 years of speaking out for the planet, for environmental causes, for justice causes. There were weeks in which I could get out of bed and yet was unable to make a single sound. And I worked with a woman named Jenny Steck. Jenny is a vocal therapist and vocal coach here in Dallas. And she saved me. She saved my voice. I think she is watching today. And I am eternally grateful to Jenny Steck and the work that she did to restore my voice so that I could be with you today. And I could go back to doing what I do, which is shooting my mouth off on behalf of good causes. But thank you, Jenny, and thank you for being here today. I want to begin with chapter 1 of The River Always Wins. On a broad plain outside Taos, New Mexico, leading to the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, a bridge spans a deep, narrow gorge, and at the bottom of the steep rock walls is a river, the Rio Grande. The water roaring below, so distant as to be silent in its rushing, did not begin its long journey to the Gulf of Mexico at the bottom of the gorge. It began on the top, on the surface, and over more years than can be known, the way the indigenous know the time to plant corn, or a mother knows to stroke a child's hair, or even in the soulless counting of seconds within a digital timepiece. The water found and caressed and forced its way through rock. When the snow melts ran plentiful, the water worked on the rock. When drought came, the water, though less, worked on the rock. At no time did the water ever stop working on the rock. A single trickle, a single drop constituted the whole of water itself, for its purpose and its nature are known to itself. And what is the nature of the river? The river is made of drops. Every river in the world, the Ganges, the Nile, the Amazon, the Hudson, the Mississippi, is made of drops. One drop is every drop. Rivers, ancient as days, may differ in the life along their banks, their depth, or the frequency of their flooding, but one thing is true. If enough drops flow together in the same direction long enough, the river always wins. There was a time in this country when women were not even allowed to vote, but the river won. There was a time in this country when Black people were enslaved because of the color of their skin, but the river won. Through many centuries, gay people had to live in the shadows and hide their truest selves, but the river is winning on that issue and will continue to. If enough drops flow together in the same direction long enough, the river always wins. Thank you. I'd like to take a moment and teach. We talk about eco-poetry and essay. The River Always Wins is a lyric essay, a prose poem. But let's take the word eco. It comes from the Greek word oikos, which means house or home. So when we talk about ecology ecology movement, which I came up in back in the early 70s. We're talking about taking care of our home, this planet. So let's remember as we talk about eco-poetry, what it is that we're discussing. The book takes the reader down through the river, and we come from the headwaters, of course. So I'm going to do a reading now from chapter 4, the headwaters. It is the headwaters of movement, for all activity on the earth is tied to the movement of water, of tides, of rivers and rainfall, of drinking water moving through pipes, of crops and hydropower, of wild animals on the Serengeti migrating to watering holes. And that movement, the movement of water, is tied to gravity and slope and the moon to the earth and the earth to the sun and to the far reaches of the universe. The clear liquid raised to your lips in a simple glass comes not only from a faucet or a well, but from the dark side, not only of the moon, but the cosmos itself. Creation myths from around the world often feature water. The old narrative, the testament from the desert home of the Judeo-Christian tradition, begins with Genesis 1:1. The text says that the Spirit of God was moving over the face of the waters. It was moving. It had somewhere to go. In Hinduism, the Ganges is sacred. The river Styx is the crossing point into the afterlife in Greek mythology. In these beginnings was water, seminal in our understandings of starting points, of crossings and endings. Whole cultures rise up, the manifestations both spiritual and physical, from the narrative of water understood and made real in place and time. From the beginnings, they are with us. Headwaters, whether bubbling up from a muddy seep or rippling in a thin sheet down a rock face, seek a place to go, to pool resources and organize into a trickle and then a stream, carving and curling down an arroyo toward a creek and then a tributary to find a canyon, always seeking, always wanting. What then is a headwaters? It is a place to prepare, not simply to begin, but to make ready, to gather strength and sense of purpose. It is widely thought that the venerable Rosa Parks and her refusal to give up her seat on the bus in Montgomery, Alabama in December of 1955 is the headwaters of the American Civil Rights Movement. But the headwaters of that river came long before. On the west coast of Africa, more than 400 years ago, there was a human being in chains, standing, looking out onto water, vast and distant, the Atlantic Ocean. They saw the ships, their sails, knew their purpose, slave ships, ready. From somewhere within them rose up the words, "Oh, hell no." And then we will be free. And if not us, then our children, our children's children, the grandchildren of our grandchildren, we will be free. Oh, hell yes. The headwaters are within us. There is no new water. As we know, we all live in troubled times, challenging times. And I think it's important that we take a moment as we go through these tumultuous times to remember the importance of still water. It's interesting as an artist, as a writer, to create a piece and think that you know what it's about. I wrote this book, The River Always Wins, as a metaphor for hope and progress, about justice, the environment. And yet, I have found that there's another piece to it in this day and time. I've had phone calls from people who have struggled with depression for years, who tell me that reading the book has lifted them out of depression in these challenging times. A man with really deep health problems called to say that he was ready to give up. But once he read the book, he found new hope. So I think that's one thing we have to remind ourselves of as writers and as artists, as performers, is that we think we know what we did this for, but often we don't. People find other things within it. So whatever meanings that you find within it, you're welcome to those. Still water. There is an old saying that still water runs deep, but that is not true. If it ran, it wouldn't be still. Nothing is ever still on the molecular level, not within us and not on the far edges of the universe, ever expanding and pushing on and hurtling away from itself and ourselves. The rapids and the flood exhaust us, make us cry out for respite and rest. Stillness washes us up on the bank, gasping and coughing up the torrent that has overwhelmed us. Oh, how we long to be still. After work, we rush home. We change into expensive yoga gear and drive like hell to make it to class to study an ancient tradition that offers mindfulness and inner peace. Oh, how we long to be still. The Zen master, when asked the essence of Zen, offers 3 words. Catch your breath. Catch your breath. Live now in this moment. Breathe and know that you are breathing. As we move through the book, we move through drought, we move through rapids and floods, we move through the returns of rains, we move through time, the estuary. And throughout the book, I refer to the greater water being a metaphor for the afterlife. And so I'll read now as I move toward closing from chapter 12, the greater water. Actually, the destination does matter. Yes, the journey matters, but so does the destination. If you keep going toward the greater water, you will eventually reach a place that joins you with other drops that have come from all the headwaters. And what do the drops learn from this? They learn to move with purpose toward goodness, and that the journey has been worth it, even the droughts and the floods. They learn that there is progress and hope in all things human, and that time is not an ultimate measure. The drops learn that the culmination of this long, arduous way is the knowledge that they are just getting started. The drops learn as well the simple truth that without the ocean, without such a place to balance and maintain life systems, humanity would perish. If the oceans die, we die. For now, we continue. Undertows and riptides and jet streams move drops in ways never imagined within the river. Peaceful, restful? No. The greater water is dynamic and powerful, and it moves. And what do the drops learn from this ride on the tide? That the destination is not what they expected, and the journey gets even better. The drops, free now, have moved on to a place unique to itself, but part of something greater than itself. And yet, as vast as the ocean is, it is in truth a big thing on a small, vain planet. Even more, the greater water provides a place for our longings, the universal desire for a place better than this present world we have created. Each evening, people gather on beaches around the world, not only for the beauty of the sunset, but because the sun over the water is so far beyond ourselves that a person can imagine that there is room between here and there for our souls, for hope between the sunset and the sunrise in the east 12 hours later. This collection of drops stretching to the horizon, the coalescing of the drops from all the rivers, is not a placid rest, but an adventure and an invitation. Come on, let's go. We're free now, come on. We're part of the greater water and on the way to it at the same time. Eternal rest is to be found in moving on, in constant motion, surfers on a long, slow curl into the ether. The sun is always shining on the ocean someplace. Drops timeless and salty infused from the estuary cruise on the currents, free to be borne through and across a liquid world, rich in a promise of future places never expected nor even imagined. Hope and progress now must enlist the drops of the world to sustain itself. Our culture has taught us that there is nothing greater than our own selves, and that is a lesson in smallness. Life is long and large. The present and the future are one and the same, and the past is as varied as life under the sea. The drops have come down from the headwaters through a chiseled course to the greater water, which is both reward but also preparation, for nothing yet is done. A drop and more drops fly through the water to new places, to cycles of continuation as circular as the globe and the currents that traverse it. Moving on with constant purpose, eternal in their movement, they surge out to sea, the greater water. Thank you. There is one more chapter in the book. Actually, it's an epilogue, and that epilogue pulls it all back together, takes it back to the beginning. But I'm not going to read that to you. I'll leave that for you to read for yourself. Thank you so much.